Every man is born seeking to protect what he loves, but when fate takes away what is most valuable, that strength can turn to darkness. The Upper Moon 3 embodies that tragedy. A child who suffered too soon, a young man who sought to be strong, and a man who lost himself when he could not save what he loved most. His story is not only that of a demon, it is also a mirror of our own. A reminder of how fragile we are in the face of pain and how wounds can shape or twist the soul, because behind his brutality lies one of the most tragic and painful stories of Kimetsu no Yaiba.
Today we're going to go through the life and death of the masked human demon.
Because before becoming Akaza, he was once Hakuji, a poor child like so many others. Since he was little, his destiny was marked by misery. His mother had died and his father was consumed by a terrible disease. Desperate, Hakuji steals on the streets to obtain the medicine that could save the only bond that still kept him standing. But due to his young age, he is often caught and brutally punished by the magistrate. However, no matter how much he is beaten, his behavior does not reform. None of that matters to the boy. His sole determination is to cure his father, and for that all he needs to do is get stronger every day, starting the obsession that marks his path. Ever since he was aware, Hakuji has dedicated all his energy to protecting. At just 11 years old, he knows that he lives in a race against time. An honest job would never give him enough money before his father loses his life. At that time, Akaza did not know that his sick father was not clinging to life. Silently, all he wants is for his son to find a dignified path, a future worth living. But Hakuji, blind to these desires, steals again. This time the magistrate decides to punish him as an adult. Even before becoming a demon, Akaza demonstrates superhuman endurance. At just 11 years old, he endures 100 consecutive blows capable of rendering any adult unconscious. In this way, he earns the title of the Monster Child. His arms are marked with 3 horizontal lines. With this, the deplorable state justice condemns him to a life of marginalization and misery, beginning his story as a demon, especially since upon returning home, Hakuji is met with the worst news of all. His father has taken his own life. The boy was an unbeliever. What was his father's last act of love? Sick and dying, the knight chose to die rather than drag his son into ruin. In his will, he asks his son to please live an honest life. He still has time to start over. Unfortunately, amidst the tears of farewell, the boy recognizes that this world is not for the poor and miserable. Hakuji is tired of every day being a struggle. So instead of having the strength to honor his father's legacy, he decides to vent his frustration against the corrupt people who have done nothing to help them. His father, who never harmed anyone, has died, while the village authorities live without suffering any need. As warned, the adults respond by trying to catch him to cut off his arms, but one by one they are met by the fury of the orphan, who at just 11 years old defeats the magistrate's men. However, his streak is interrupted when a man dressed in a kimono appears, who instructs him using a combat technique known as the Soryu style. This painful encounter that seems like the end is actually the beginning of a new hope. He is a martial arts master who welcomes him as his son. The skilled sensei not only does not judge him, but gives him a chance to redeem himself. He teaches him discipline, trains him and, just as his father wanted, little by little the boy finds an honorable way to live. During his stay at the dojo, his duty is to take care of Koyuki, the master's daughter, a frail and sick young woman who has lost hope. The mother had gone to great lengths a year ago to avoid the pain of seeing her daughter die. In this new tragedy, Hakuji finds a new opportunity here. His father's death left him devastated because he knew that he could save her through his care. But now he can prove that he was right. Home as a demon, he claims to hate any trace of weakness. But curiously, when the princess apologizes to Hakuji for her delicate health, that makes no sense. A sick person should not apologize for his weakness. His condition is inevitable and beyond his control. For the young man, it is not a burden. On the contrary, he finds a purpose there. And the most striking thing is that even his own name seemed to have predestined him. Hakuji is composed of 2 kanji with powerful symbolism. The first, Koma, refers to the Komeinu, the guardian lion dogs that guard the temples of Japan against evil. And the second, Kai, which means to cure or heal. In other words, Akaza's identity was once marked by protection and healing. Our protagonist needs someone to protect in order to be at peace, an evil that the sensei says he shares. One day, like any other, the master won the property where the dojo is located by defending a defenseless old man from some bandits. The lord was fascinated by his Soryu technique, and since he had no heirs, he gave him the land. However, the neighboring dojos did not agree with this decision. They wanted the land to expand their domain, and for that reason the master had never had any students. Hakuji was the first. There the boy not only learned his combat technique, but he also healed his heart. With the determination that characterizes him, Hakuji takes care of the girl just as he once took care of his father. And one afternoon, like any other, the princess asks him to please take a break from her and go out to watch the fireworks. Hakuji, like a true gentleman, replies that if she feels better later, they can go out to watch the fireworks together. And if she doesn't, they can always go out to watch them next year or the year after. After all, there are fireworks every year. The girl bursts into tears upon hearing these words. She doesn't even expect to live another day, while her caretaker is determined to overcome his weakness. The young man's words prove prophetic. 3 years later, Koyuki leaves her bed and is finally going to have a normal life at the age of 16. And just as he promised, Hakuji takes her to watch the fireworks. That night the girl confesses that her caretaker's optimism was the pillar of her recovery. He made her understand that he existed a year later. That was the reason for her sudden tears. When she cried with happiness, and now, 3 years later, the young woman holds his hands, looks him in the eyes and asks him if he would like to marry her. Hakuji, without a doubt, answers yes. He promises his beloved that he will be the strongest of all and that he will protect her for the rest of his life. Koyuki's smile betrays that this was the happiest day of her life. The next morning, his master gives him his blessing to marry his daughter while humbly asking him to take care of the dojo. Hakuji can't believe it. With his arms marked like a criminal, he never imagined having a future, much less one where he could be loved. Perhaps his father was right. He can still find a dignified way to live. That hope of being able to repair his life grows so fast that he can't control it. At that moment his only desire was to protect his master and his wife, even if he has to give his life to do it. Hakuji visits his father's grave to give him the great news of his marriage. The disciplined boy returns to the dojo before the sun has set. But even on the sunniest days, demons are among us. As Hakuji looks at the entrance to the dojo, he feels sick. A bad feeling takes over his body. As he reaches the door, he receives the news. His master and his future wife were dead. Someone had poisoned the well from which they drank their water, all because they could not defeat their master in a direct fight. The cowards of the neighboring dojos poisoned them to take over the land and did not care about ending the life of their daughter. Hakuji enters to say goodbye to his wife. Here his mentality breaks down at the idea that his promise to protect Koyuki with his life remained mere words. The young man feels that time and time again he is unable to defend those he loves most when they need it most. The magistrate's office receives a report of what happened, but since these were influential villagers and not desperate children, they do not administer any kind of justice. That night the dojo Kimetsu meets to celebrate the expansion, but the ceremony is interrupted by a visit from Hakuji. Blinded by pain, the student confronts 67 swordsmen with only his fists as his weapon. Each and every one of them is cut down. Hakuji uses the Saurian style not to protect, but to kill, filling his master's sacred legacy with blood. What happened there seemed to come from the deepest hell. Skulls were crushed, bodies reduced to unrecognizable masses of flesh. The madam in charge of cleaning lost her mind upon witnessing the scene. The official record was so absurd that the magistrate dismissed it as a mere fictional tale. But those who saw it with their own eyes never forgot the act. To them, that night was not the work of a man, but the result of a visit from the worst of demons. Rumors reach Muzan. The Demon King had not sent any of his own to the area. To confirm the gossip, he travels to the village, but instead of finding one of his own, he encounters a mere human. In a state of shock, the young man warns the demon to move or he will be the next to die. But Muzan is the one who steps forward and uses his fist to pierce Hakuji's skull. Hakuji explains that he is seeking to create 12 exceptional demons. If the young man can bear his blood, he will be one of them. It is at this point that Hakuji becomes a human and in his place the Upper Moon number 3 is born. Although his memories disappear, traces remain that reveal who he once was. The marks on his body that once condemned him as a criminal are now inscribed with the name of the woman he loved, the color of his skin and hair reflecting the tones of Koyuki's kimono. His life as a demon becomes a blind pursuit to be the strongest. Before he sought power to protect, now he pursues it aimlessly, like a castaway swimming in an endless sea, without remembering why he began the journey. For over a century, Chinese swordsmen have been relentlessly judging, executing, and calling them weak, and yet, even amidst the massacre, a rift of humanity survives. The demon never touches a woman. Deep within, the son who wants to save his father and the man who dreams of growing old with Koyuki still breathes. A vague memory that even he himself does not understand. His hatred for weakness is irrational, yet absolute. He attacks the weak because it somehow evokes the shadow of the cowards who poison wells, but deep down, what he truly despises is his own weakness. AKA's, in 100 years, has never had the strength to fulfill his father's last will, and with each passing day, he continues to stain his master's legacy with blood. Perhaps that is why, although he is the third Upper Moon, Muzan only deploys him on very special occasions, because even at the height of his power, he was still a warrior at war with himself. That is why his first official appearance is on the infernal train. The demon appears to recruit the Pillar of Flame. For 100 years he has recruited demons, but all have been turned down by the pillars and none have lived up to the expectations his master requires. Rengoku is his best bet to end this bad streak. But before making the proposal, Akaza decides to eliminate the weakling who is badly injured on the ground, a detail that makes it clear that the boy who took care of bedridden individuals is a very distant shadow. The Pillar of Flame defends him with his second stance and labels the Upper Moon as a being with very low values. Akaza explains that he only wanted to get rid of Tanjiro so that he would not interrupt his proposal. Upon hearing the demon's offer, Rengoku refuses to betray his people. Like Hakuji, the Pillar of Flame understands that his sacred duty is to protect the weak. Faced with the demon's refusal, the demon prepares to fight. His signature ability is the compass needle, an ability that is a direct reference to the snowflakes his wife used. Through this sensory technique, can he anticipate any attack from any direction? The demon mixes the Sario style with blood techniques. He is the only Upper Moon who does not use any kind of weapons. If before his resistance was surprising, now as a demon he enjoys every cut he is able to open the pillar. His fight against Rengoku is intense. With each passing minute, the demon becomes frustrated at the idea of wasting his adversary's power. Akaza explains over and over again that being a demon would allow Rengoku to reach levels of power impossible for a human, making it clear that our protagonist values strength above all else. The demon never tires of extending his hand to transform him, but the pillar denies him even when he is on the verge of death. Victory for the pillar does not mean having insurmountable strength, but rather fighting so that no one on the train dies, similar to how he promised to defend his wife and father-in-law to the death. The young man's words were sincere, but in the end they came to nothing. However, Rengoku has the opportunity to fulfill his sacred purpose and he does not intend to waste it. That fighting spirit and determination excites the demon. He no longer remembers why he connects with his opponent's high values, but he still gives him his utmost respect. The ninth stance of the Pillar of Flame impacts against the annihilation of destructive death, a clash that causes lethal damage to both parties, but only one ends up suffering. Faced with the imminent death of the pillar, the desperate Kasa practically begs him to accept being a demon. But after remembering his mother's teachings, the Pillar's response remains the same: to wield his sword to fulfill his sacred duty to protect the weak. The Pillar of Flame tries to extract the demon's head, starting a fight that is a battle against time. On one hand, the hunter's wounds are lethal, and on the other, the rising sun threatens to contaminate the demon's life. Rengo fights with all his might to hold his adversary's arms, but as is characteristic of him, he has no problem using his strength to cut off his own arms and thus continue his life. Tanjiro, with his reality completely altered, attacks him with his sword while yelling that he is a coward for running away. Words that almost send the demon back to kill him, but before the sun set it would be suicide. Although Home won the battle, Lord Rengoku managed to win the battle of life. The pillar has fulfilled its divine purpose, while our protagonist must continue living a meaningless existence. Because if we analyze it in depth, the death of the pillar is what Hakuji would have wished, as long as his beloved and master continued living. After the battle, the demon appears before Muzan. Akaza seems to be hoping to be congratulated for taking down the flame pillar, but instead he is punished for failing to take down the 4 hunters who were on the scene. At the demon's speed it would have taken him only a second to take them all out, but he has also failed to obtain the blue spider lily, a flower that blooms for a few hours each year during the day. The Demon King needs it to complete his transformation and overcome his weakness to the sun. Unfortunately, Akaza's botanical skills are not up to par with his fighting skills. The Upper Moon is a disappointment in the eyes of his master, but if we're being honest, the demon doesn't care about any of this. All he wants is to become the most powerful demon of all. Does he look down on all his colleagues who are weaker than him and is all about surpassing the power of Kakashibo, the Upper Moon? In short, finding the blessed flower is a task he only does in his spare time. More than his king's rebukes, the demon is disturbed by having allowed a non-pillar to call him a coward. Instead of seeking out a botanist to help him find the flower, Akaza spends the next few years searching for Tanjiro. However, Akaza's hunt is interrupted by a historical event: the fall of the 6th superior moon. In 113 years, no crescent moon has been defeated by a hunter. Each time a superior moon falls, the Demon King gathers his wards in an assembly that feels more like a trial than a meeting. There are some important revelations. The first is that Doma never misses an opportunity to harass Kasa. The 2nd superior moon is bothered by his failure to consume young girls and suggests that he receive special treatment from the master. The answer is swift in coming. To attack a superior is to challenge him to a blood duel, the ancient method by which superior moons ascend in the hierarchy. However, the confrontation is interrupted by the beginning of the meeting. The Demon King doesn't waste time on games. He demands once again the same thing he's been asking for centuries: the blue spider lily. To him, his generals are inept. They haven't been able to find a single flower that blooms during the day, nor exterminate a family of cripples. The Demon King issues his final order: find the leader of the hunters. The 4th and 5th upper moons must move immediately to confirm his location. The 2nd moon tries to take over the mission to gain favor with his master, but Kasa attacks him from behind. Fear and a wife are definitely what the demon lacks. The upper moon cuts off his hand to discipline his subordinate for disrespecting the hierarchy. If he so desires to impose himself on his superiors, he must challenge them to a blood duel. Duma breaks the tension with a poisoned truth. Even if Kasa were to challenge him, he would never be able to defeat him. He says this with irony, recalling a past duel in which our protagonist has already tasted defeat. And not only that, he finishes the mockery by hinting at Akasa's humiliation. Trapped in third place despite the centuries and being the longest lived, but he does not allow himself to be chained by the past. With the same determination with which he once protected his father Yakoyuki, he swears that the day will come when he will end the life of the upper moon, and it is truly an inescapable destiny that is only avoided by his fortuitous confrontation with Tanjiro and Giyu. CA is not even halfway to his maximum potential as a demon, and yet he dominates the fight against the water pillar and the protagonist. The only thing stopping him is not Gilu's sword or speed, but the crack that remains in his soul. Tanjiro's words are the same ones his teacher used. This fortuitous coincidence causes him to begin to recover his memories. His sensei always told him that weakness is part of the process. Everyone starts out weak until someone helps them become stronger. It is the natural process of life. Despite the sudden memories, Akaza resists the truth. He refuses to open his past wounds. Gyo activates his mark. His speed is incredible. However, the fight continues to be a game in which he begs to be hit harder. The upper moon only wants to know the limit of his opponent's power, because for Akaza, the fight is not a means, it is an end in itself, his only way of existing and his path to the top. In this way, Giyu and Akaza are opposites. The water pillar suffers from exercising violence, while the demon lives for it. This difference means that Giyu does not stand a chance. After giving it his all, it is Giro who ends up saving his life. After that moment, Akaza decides to finish the fight with his ultimate technique, 100 blows that go off in all directions with effects that simulate the fireworks he once saw with the love of his life. After this, Giyu is no longer in a position to fight, and, just like Rengoku, the demon understands that ending his adversary's existence is a great waste. Akaza extends his hand to transform him into a demon. The proposal is interrupted by Tiro's cry, who warns him that he is about to remove his head. An extremely important gesture. Only cowards and weaklings attack from behind. Akaza responds by activating his blood technique, but strangely his adversary has no fighting spirit. Without it, the demon cannot anticipate his movements. In this way, Tanjiro surprises him with his solar breath and against all odds manages to remove his head. Akaza understands immediately. The hunter in front of him has reached the transparent world, the place he has always wanted to be, but has never managed to reach. All demons, when defeated, remember their lives and regret the decisions they have made. But not Akaza. He simply could not accept defeat. He must become the strongest of all. And here he shows us that his power is not based on blood techniques, but rather on his unwavering determination. Even after losing his head to the Nirin sword, the warrior refuses to fall. Akaza continues to fight with his headless body. His regeneration powers evolve to the point of regenerating his head, driven solely by his willpower. With this milestone, the third crescent moon begins to approach its true potential. At this rate, it could even be close to surpassing the second moon itself, but something interrupts it. In the midst of the frenzy, he hears the voice of a woman, a delicate figure who begs him to stop. He no longer remembers who it is, but the figure is sacred to him. The demon replies that he cannot stop until he is the strongest of all. Without strength, he will not be able to get the medicine for his father. Memories of his past return violently. After remembering his early life, the demon labels his entire existence as a human as a waste. His life was full of broken promises. At that moment, Tanjiro can smell regret. His entire existence has been sad and empty. He regrets all the massacres he has caused, but it is too late to turn back. When aka Samwara will not be able to reunite with the people he loves. So the demon doubles down and resumes his battle against the pillar. With his head almost restored, he launches his new attack against Giyu, but then something unexpected happens. Tanjiro, wounded and on the verge of collapse, connects with a desperate blow. A simple blow, without force, but loaded with truth. That impact resonates with Nasa. It is an impact identical to the one he received from his master when he was just a child. A blow that changed him once and now does it again. Sometimes it is not the sharpest sword that brings down a warrior, but the reminder of who he used to be. The demon finally understands the origin of his hatred for weakness. He does not only hate the weak who poison the wells or the cowards who do not fight head-on. He also hates himself because his weakness led him to stain his master's sacred style with blood and he was never strong enough to fulfill his father's last will. Akaza then discovers an unforgiving truth. If he truly wants to defeat the weakest in the room, he must start by destroying himself. With the same determination that defined him in life, he attacks his only remaining enemy. The demon unleashes 100 blows on his own body, trying to break the infernal cycle of regeneration that keeps him tied to Muzan. However, his demonic flesh recomposes itself over and over again as if the punishment cannot be erased. A house full of honors for his adversary. He says that De Niro's move was splendid. A defeat more than just and he has nothing left to fight for. Recognizing defeat, The demon's mask shatters and what remains is Hakuji, a tired, wounded and especially ashamed man. He bows before the memory of his father and his teacher and asks for their forgiveness, not for having been weak, but for having forgotten what it truly meant to be strong. Muzan interrupts his surrender and shouts at him that his only destiny is to be the strongest in the world, that he cannot waste his existence in this way. The demon, faithful to this sentence, stands up to continue the battle. Even if they behead him, he can still advance on the path of hatred, but just when he is about to take another step, a pair of hands stop him. They are soft, warm, and for the first time in centuries, they do not hit him, they support him. It is the spirit of Koyuki, his deceased wife. Upon seeing her and hearing her words, Akaza's face breaks into tears and he becomes the young Jikuyi again. Desperate, he asks for forgiveness over and over again for not being present. After genuine repentance, his father and teacher welcome him into the heavens, accepting him despite all the atrocities committed. A son is always a son and an apprentice is always an apprentice. So does Koyuki, the great love of his life. Thus, after remembering who he was, Akaza achieves something that truly seemed impossible for a demon to regain his humanity. His soul rises and rests surrounded by those who marked his life with kindness and tenderness. In this way, Akaza's story is not just that of a fearsome demon, it is that of a child who lost too soon, a young man who sought strength to protect and a man who sank into darkness for not being able to save what he loved the most. His ending reminds us of something powerful. True strength is not in violence, but in supporting those we love the most. Akaza spent his life running away from his pain, chasing a strength that never filled the void in his heart, but in the end he found what he always sought, not glory or victory, but Koyuki's embrace, his master's forgiveness and the calm he never had in life. Akaza Kimetsu's death teaches us that even the darkest paths can turn toward the light. No matter how far we have fallen or how many mistakes we carry, as long as there is a moment of awareness there will always be room for redemption. Akaza Kimetsu's tragedy is also a metaphor for the human condition. Falling, failing, losing ourselves in violence or pain, all are part of our condition, but what really matters are not the falls, but the decision to set a limit and say, that's it. In the end, Akaza teaches us that genuine regret is a form of victory, that our final decision can carry more weight than a lifetime of stumbles and that even if it takes decades to awaken, it will never be in vain to choose humanity over resentment. The sensei was a stoic who understood that true power is not living without making mistakes, but understanding that it is always possible to be better than we were yesterday. And perhaps that is the most valuable lesson, not to fear our falls, but to never get up, because a bad streak, no matter how long, never defines who we are. What defines us is the way in which we decide to end our story. But this is not the last lesson that the saga leaves us. If Akaza was able to find redemption at the end of his hell, what fate awaits the other demons who are still standing? That is what this video is about, where I narrate everything that happens in the second part of the film. I hope to see you there.